a lot more questions than answers. As I said, Barry Obama was briefed on the shootings, according to his spokesperson, Bob Gibbs. Fort Hood has seen other violence in recent years. In September 2008, a 21-year-old 1st Cavalry Division soldier shot his lieutenant to death and then killed himself. Jody Michael Weiraran of Eagle River, Alaska, shot himself to death after the 1st Lieutenant Robert Bartlett Fletcher, 24, of Jensen Beach, was also shot to death. Very difficult. I think one of the comments made by the gatekeepers was that these stories, as they come in, the facts are very shady, and a lot of times it's just very difficult to determine what is actually happening. Now, this is the news service way to cover themselves in case something gets reported that they later want to retract. Of course, we remember so much of the news on the day of 9/11, bombs going off in building, and for that matter, Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City bombings, the BATF being warned not to go in the building that day through text messages. There were so many things that were reported initially that the news wanted to take back, and that's always the smokescreen that they use, is that, it's just the confusion of reporting. Well, certainly there is some confusion. There is what they call the fog of war when trying to report a story like this, and of course, if you're one news service, you're trying to outgoop the other news service, but keep in mind that not everything they report is indeed wrong, so we have to pay attention to as much of it as we can as it comes in, and then, of course, as always, we come back after this, and then we try to make sense of exactly, what it is that was reported, what facts can be verified, and what form of a cover-up there might be. BBC News is reporting 7 people killed, at least 20 injured in a pair of shootings at Fort Hood military base in Texas. The U.S. Army has confirmed, again, 1 person arrested, at least 1 more on the run. The base has been locked down. This is the BBC, so I'm not sure they've had the recent update of 3 shooters. This is Fox News, Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Banks. I'm looking now. I'm going to need my glasses for this, folks, so stay with me. Nathan Banks said 2 shooters were apparently involved. There is no word on where they were, nor the identities of the dead. The second incident took place at a theater in Fort Hood, according to Banks. Some media reports said the number of victims remained unclear. Banks said a motive wasn't immediately known, and it's too soon to tell whether there's any link to battle stress or repeated deployment, in other words, PTSD. The Army is suffering record-high suicide rates and other signs of stress from fighting at least 2 wars. Here's retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis told Fox News that those at the base are trained for combat, and it is not unusual to see armed people there. It could be a terror attack, quote-unquote. It could be a disenchanted soldier or soldiers. It could be a variety of people. So really no solid information coming in yet, but this is ongoing and it has not ended. I believe, I'm sure when it ends and the excuses start coming out through interrogation, we're going to at least have a little better of a handle on what we're seeing here today. I'm looking, some people suggesting that this could be something like Broken Arrow. I'm sure you might have seen the film or heard the term before, the potential that foreign military or terrorists could break in, take over a military base like this, and then use the weapons upon the very country whose base they had taken over. We have seen bases attacked around the world, never yet here, at least in modern history, here in this country. So this could be a simple case of PTSD, as they say, disenfranchised soldiers, who had some kind of a vendetta. Speaking of which, today, V for Vendetta, Guy Fawkes Day. Now, it would be very easy to put something together with militia or with somebody in the Patriot movement, people who could very well have been patsies moving on Fort Hood. Of course, there are other scenarios as well that this could be a takeover coup by Americans getting a hold of Fort Hood, certainly to get back at the country for whatever reason, an attack potentially on the government itself by the people. We can't rule something like that out, though I certainly hope that isn't the case. It maybe is a little bit exciting, certainly is not going to help our cause, so we'll cross our fingers that it doesn't end up like that. But Just noting the day here, Guy Fawkes Day, very, very interesting timing. Now we've got reports that more people are listed as dead. The BBC, I think, is reporting upwards to 30 people dead. That's coming from Kay Bailey Hutchinson, who is allegedly in contact with the base. 9 people dead, potentially 30 wounded. So now we have to ask the question, folks, is this attack escalating, or are they just finding more bodies as they go along? Again, here's another report, upward to 30 people. It looks like the media has rolled back from the 3 gunmen, the 3 shooters, and that's very interesting because these reports seem to be confirmed initially, but now it almost seems like they're rolling back. You remember the VTech shooting? We had first heard there was 2 shooters, and then eventually there was 1, and then we were all left to ask the question, how could one person do all of this by themselves? I'm not going to go back over our analysis of VTech, but that certainly could apply here, and we know that the media have and the government certainly have done quite a bit in the past to cover up the facts, even while a story is breaking, though it's much harder to do while it's breaking. Are you there, 702?
Yeah, Jack, David from An American Warning. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how you doing? I guess this kind of caught you right in the middle of your show. Were you able to report on this?
Yeah, we were covering it as it came. We've got the entire NewsNetUSA.com team kind of backing us up on this. And,
oh, good.
And you're right. There's a lot of information, a lot of misinformation out there. But the death toll looks like it's going to be at about 9 right now. We still have a couple people who are critical. Looks like the count is upwards of 30 as far as injured. But there's a couple things here. It looks like there was 2 separate attacks, 2 different areas at 2 different times, and it looks like they have 2 in custody, and they're still misinformation about the 3rd, if not more. So it's kind of...
So you've got reports now that 2 are in custody.
Right.
Okay, that we haven't heard. In fact, the latest report I have, they're still on the lookout for a second shooter, and again, they're rolling back from the 3rd. Okay, MSNBC reported speculation there may be a 3rd gunman. I also heard that on Fox, and I also heard that from Congressman Carter, who has a man inside the facility. So we have to take that for what it is. One of the shooters at large was believed to have a high-powered sniper rifle holed up in the building surrounded by SWAT teams. Not immediately clear if it was an attack on the base or whether the shootings were carried out by U.S. soldiers. That's, again, something we're trying to figure out here. Local Congressman John Carter said the gunfire had erupted ahead of a graduation ceremony in the Soldier Readiness Center. He has a man on the scene, his regional director, former chaplain at Fort Hood, who is there inside the building now. Small arms and rifle fire being reported, and that they had 1 person and potentially now 2 in custody. If there's 2 in custody, then if there isn't a 3rd shooter, this would be over. Why don't you go ahead and Dave, tell us what you know. We're with Dave Robertson from An American Warning, the show leading into ours here on American Freedom Radio.
Well, it looks like the FBI is stating that it's not a terrorist situation. Still sketchy details as to what they consider or what they're thinking it is. Of course, the count of who's injured and who isn't is still varied. Looks like President Obama is going to address the nation here soon. But they know at least, and that's the word that they're using now, at least 7 are killed, upwards of 9. Of course, 2 to 4 are critical, and they know that 30 are hurt in this shooting. And, of course, we've got the team from NewsNetUSA.com working on it, and they're feeding information from multiple sources around the country. Also, too, something else we should notice and note, I should say, is that bases across the country are starting to react. There was a situation at Fort Benning that they were saying that their people are being put on alert and being told to be vigilant because, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of symbolism when it comes to today, and kind of an interesting situation.
What information do you have that this isn't confirmed, not a terrorist attack of some kind? How do we know that at this point?
Well, and that's the thing that I question myself. The FBI was underway. As soon as this happened, the FBI was called out, and they were on the way, and whatever they found out in the interim, they had released a report saying this wasn't terrorism. That coming from the FBI, not, by the way, just to clarify.
Well, maybe what they mean is this isn't one of their people, or this isn't a sting operation. information that got away from them, as we saw that happen in the 93 World Trade Center attack. So maybe they're trying to distance themselves from it at some point. It seems, it just seems a little erroneous at this point to make a statement like that, though they do have people in custody, and potentially they could have that information. They could have that information.